I was driving late into the night, my eyes heavy with fatigue. The rain pounded relentlessly against the windshield, distorting the view of the dark road ahead. I desperately needed a break, a reprieve from the overwhelming silence. My heart skipped a beat in relief as a flickering neon sign came into view, barely visible through the storm. Truck stop. I parked my truck, the engine sighing with exhaustion. Stepping out into the biting rain, I rushed towards the glowing entrance, thankful for the sanctuary from the treacherous weather. The inside of the truck stop was dimly lit, casting eerie shadows on the grimy linoleum floors. The only sound was the low hum of refrigeration units and the muffled conversation of the few patrons scattered around the room. With a sigh of satisfaction, I settled into a corner booth. The waitress seemed peculiar, her eyes hauntingly vacant as she took my order. Trying to ignore her unsettling presence, I focused on the small TV screen mounted on the wall, playing an old horror movie. The film depicted a young girl, her ghostly figure lurking in abandoned motels. My skin prickled uncomfortably. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting an unsettling darkness across the truck stop. Panic surged through my veins as a spine-chilling cackle echoed through the eerie silence. I watched in horror as the waitress transformed before my eyes, her face contorting into an image of pure evil. Her ghastly laughter pierced through the air, reaching depths of my soul untouched by any previous fear. As the lights flickered back on, the truck stop returned to its stagnant state, the waitress once again lost in a vacant stare. I stumbled out of the booth, my heart pounding violently. Desperate to escape the clutches of this nightmare, I ran back to my truck, never to forget the haunted truck stop that forever chilled my bones. The highway stretched out before me, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the desolate landscape. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the empty road. I spotted a flickering neon sign in the distance, promising respite in the form of a truck stop oasis. Pulling into the dimly lit parking lot, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air was heavy with an unnatural stillness, and the flickering sign emitted an eerie hum. As I stepped out of the car, the silence seemed to press against my ears, broken only by the distant rumble of a passing truck. The truck stop was a time capsule from a bygone era, its worn facade hiding decades of forgotten stories. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on faded linoleum floors. The air smelled of stale coffee and grease, and a low murmur of conversation echoed from a handful of patrons huddled at the worn-out booths. I ordered a coffee from the weary waitress behind the counter, her eyes betraying a weariness that seemed to seep into the very bones of the truck stop. As I sipped the bitter brew, a grizzled trucker approached, his eyes filled with a haunted emptiness. He spoke of the strange happenings at the truck stop. Whispers in the night, shadows that moved on their own accord. The other patrons avoided his gaze, exchanging nervous glances as if the very mention of the supernatural might summon it into their midst. That night, I parked my car near the aging fuel pumps and settled into a cramped motel room. The air hung thick with a sense of foreboding, and I could hear the creaks and groans of the ancient structure. As I drifted into sleep, the whispers of the night seemed to seep through the walls, and shadows danced in the corners of my dreams. In the morning, I awoke to find the truck stop deserted. The neon sign flickered weakly, and an unsettling quiet settled over the once bustling oasis. The worn-out booths were empty, and the waitress was nowhere to be found. I left that desolate truck stop, haunted by the ghostly remnants of a place that time had forgotten, its mysteries hidden in the whispers of the night. The truck stop emerged from the darkness like a solitary outpost in the desolate night. Weary from hours on the road, I guided my rig into the empty parking lot. The dim glow of buzzing fluorescent lights outlined the diner's worn-out facade, casting an eerie ambiance over the cracked pavement. I stepped into the diner, the jingle of the door announcing my arrival to an unsettling quiet. The air hung heavy with the scent of stale grease, and a flickering neon sign hummed a disconcerting melody. A lone waitress, her eyes tired and devoid of warmth, motioned for me to take a seat at the counter. Unease settled over me as I scanned the empty booths and shadowed corners. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of a swinging door. I ordered a coffee, hoping the caffeine would shake off the growing sense of foreboding. As I sipped the bitter brew, A grizzled trucker sidled up next to me, his eyes filled with a knowing intensity. He spoke in hushed tones of a dark secret that lurked in the shadows of this truck stop, a presence that targeted weary travelers in the dead of night. He recounted tales of phantom figures wandering the parking lot, spectral whispers that echoed through the empty booths, and the mysterious disappearance of those who dared to rest in the nearby motel. I dismissed his words as the product of an overactive imagination, but the shiver down my spine suggested otherwise. With a cautious nod, the trucker left me to my thoughts. The neon sign outside flickered, casting brief moments of darkness within the diner. The waitress, her gaze distant, poured more coffee without a word. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to mock the uneasy quiet that enveloped the truck stop. Deciding it was best to continue my journey, I stepped out into the frigid night. The parking lot felt like a graveyard of abandoned vehicles, their silent forms shrouded in darkness. As I approached my truck, a distant noise caught my attention, a low, haunting moan that seemed to echo through the night. I turned to see a figure at the edge of the parking lot, obscured by shadows. A chill ran down my spine as I realized it was the silhouette of a person, or something resembling one. The figure swayed with an unnatural grace, its movements disjointed and eerie. The neon sign flickered again, briefly illuminating the faceless entity. My breath caught as hollow eyes stared back at me, devoid of life or emotion. Fear seized my chest, and I fumbled for the keys to my truck, the distant moans growing louder with each passing second. As the engine roared to life, I glanced back one last time. The figure, still and silent, watched from the edge of the parking lot. The neon sign sputtered, casting the truck stop into darkness once more. I peeled out of the lot, the haunting moans fading into the distance. The night swallowed the truck stop in its inky embrace as I sped away, leaving behind the unsettling quiet and the lingering feeling that I had narrowly escaped a fate darker than the desolate road stretching out before me.